Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, I think I have finally fixed my audio and video issues. If I have, let me know in the comments below. After a whole lot of testing and after listening to a whole lot of suggestions from a bunch of people, I think I have found the cause of the issue. So it seems it may have been the USB ports of my laptop unable to provide consistent power to power all of my devices and make things run smoothly. And it doesn't seem that it was my gear at all. Who knows though? Anyways, I am using an external. I've got two external USB powered hubs to run everything, and I think now we're absolutely okay. If we're not, let me know in the comments below, and let me know how this mic sounds in the comments below as well. Anyways, here we're going to start out by talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Kenji NX. And Kenji NX just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, the latest version of Kenji NX is 2.0.4. As for what's new, they say here Headless in Avalonia combines the functionality of the Headless EXE into the main one, eliminating the need for a separate file. Add control and comma shortcut for settings works in game. And for the UI, they've matched the system time setting. On top of that, there's a bunch of fixes and optimizations here. They've fixed the green screen issues on Linux. And for Super Mario Party Jamboree, they have fixed the audio renderer that was crashing. And there's even more here. I would say this is a pretty big update for Kenji NX. And speaking about updates, next up we're talking about Wine, where Wine stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Wine is not an emulator, depending on how you wanted to interpret that. Anyways, Wine just released version 10.9 under the development build. It's not a stable build, but it does bring about some interesting fixes. So as for what's new here, VKD3D has been upgraded to version 1.16, and they've added in initial support for generating Windows runtime metadata in WDL. And if I scroll down here just a little bit, there's a fix for EA. So they say here the EA App Launcher problem with text display should now be fixed. For the Sega Rally Championship demo, it should also be fixed. I guess there's a problem with it crashing. And they say here the Steam GPU process crash loop with 64-bit Wine prefix should now be fixed. And speaking about wine, next up we're talking about music that I think is aging like fine wine, and that is old video game music, like Street Fighter II. Anyways, here it's being reported that Street Fighter II composer Yoko Shimomura has created a new track in Street Fighter VI and has returned to the series after over 30 years. Now, if the name of Yoko Shimomura rings a bell to you, and I might have mispronounced that one, but anyways, if this name rings a bell to you, it's not just because she worked on Street Fighter II stuff over 30 years ago. She's worked on a ton of stuff since then. She's well known in the gaming industry. I mean, she's worked on a ton of stuff for Kingdom Hearts, Super Mario RPG, Legend of Mana, Xenoblade Chronicles, Streets of Rage 4, and even more. And anyways, here, if you wanted to hear the song she made for Street Fighter VI, the Street Fighter VI Twitter account has you covered with the song right here. And speaking about a lot of stuff over the years, next up we're talking about People Can Fly. Now, People Can Fly is a game studio you may recognize from a bunch of different games out there, like Painkiller and Gears of War and Bulletstorm and Outriders, and People Can Fly has just made a huge announcement here you may not be too excited about. So here's their announcement over on Twitter. Today we made a very difficult decision to suspend the development of Project Gemini and Project Bifrost. Those are two different games. And the rationale here, the suspension of the Gemini project is a consequence of the fact that the publisher has not presented us with a draft of the subsequent content rider to the publishing agreement covering the terms and conditions of further milestones on Project Gemini, and the lack of communication from the publisher as to its willingness to continue or terminate the Gemini project. That is a mouthful. High level here, it seems that the communication from the publisher was not very good. And as for Project Bifrost, it was suspended due to the above and the analysis of the group's cash flow, which showed a lack of prospects for securing organizational resources and funds necessary to continue the production and release of this project. And this is pretty big here as well. As a result, we have to significantly regroup as a studio and scale down our teams, which hurts the most. From my understanding on this one, and based on reports I've seen over the internet, the publisher may be Square Enix. Square Enix was not directly named here, but if that is the case, that could be huge. Project Gemini was rumored to be possibly Outriders 2. Project Bifrost was an unannounced VR game, and Project Gemini was also unannounced. As a result of this pretty big announcement, a number of people have been wondering about the overall future of People Can Fly and whether or not the studio will be able to continue on. I mean, this wasn't the first time games have been suspended. Wikipedia says canceled. Earlier on, just a few months back, they canceled Project Dagger, which was a co-op action RPG. But they do seem to still have some games up their sleeve here, like Project Bison and Project Echo and Project Delta, which still don't have a whole lot of information about. If Project Gemini was their collaboration with Square Enix, the only other Square Enix game they've collaborated on, according to Wikipedia here, is Outriders, which would possibly mean Outriders 2. And if that is the case, I think Outriders fans are going to be very disappointed about this news. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. And speaking about cuts, next up we're talking about Stellar Blade, because blades can cut. Oh, that was a really bad segue. Anyways, here Stellar Blade has dropped on PC, at least the demo, and a lot of people have been checking this one out. And interestingly here, this one runs decent on the Steam Deck. It is worth mentioning that Stellar Blade does include Denuvo. If you wanted to see Stellar Blade running on the Steam Deck, DeckWizard has you covered here with a video that's just over 13 minutes long. It appears that the frame rate jumps between 40 to 50 frames per second. It's not the best. I'm hoping the game gets optimized even further here, but initial impressions are pretty good. DeckWizard does note if the game isn't starting, try using Proton Experimental. However, if you switch Proton more than 5 times, you will get locked out of the game for 24 hours, courtesy of Denuvo. We talked about that for Doom: The Dark Ages. It seems it's going to be a problem for Stellar Blade as well. And this person here says, my God, the mods are going to be glorious. And yeah, that's going to be very interesting and probably stuff you can't even talk about on YouTube. And speaking about Proton, next up we're talking about a fork of Proton called GE Proton, which is great for specific games that don't run using normal Proton. Anyways, here GE Proton 10.4 has just released, and this one does have some fixes for some pretty big games here, like Doom Eternal, Doom Dark Ages, and Rocket League. Additionally, there's fixes for Colin McRae Dirt and the Chronicles of Mirtana. Now, if you haven't used GE Proton before and you've got a Steam Deck, I do recommend checking it out. If you've got a game that can't run on the Steam Deck or your Steam Deck, but you've seen it running on other Steam Decks, it might be because of GE Proton. GE Proton is good on a game-by-game basis. And speaking about trying things out, next up we're talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, and there was some news that surfaced over on Bloomberg the other day that had a lot of people talking. It's titled, Nintendo has a shrewd plan for selling the Switch 2 in Japan. And it seems as if Nintendo is going to be trying some things out in terms of incentives to retailers to sell the Switch. Now, I don't believe this article is paywalled, so feel free to read it for more information. But they say right here, store operators will be able to make a gross margin of about 5% on each Switch 2 sold. And that's higher than the industry standard, the informal industry standard of roughly 2%. Now, I don't believe that Bloomberg was the original source of this information. I could be wrong about that, but it seems as if Nintendo has taken a stance on the whole matter here. They say on June 2nd, a news report related to the wholesale price of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the Japanese market was published. We want to clarify that this report is not true. Nintendo does not disclose any information regarding business conditions with distribution and retail partners. Now, I don't know about you, but I can see Nintendo being overly sensitive about this kind of thing given the fact that they've received a lot of blowback online about the price of the Switch 2. And if they were setting wholesale prices a little bit lower so that people could make more money on the Switch 2, well, that wouldn't go over well with consumers. I've got no idea what's going on behind the scenes with Nintendo and their distributors and the warehouses and wholesalers and all of that stuff, and I don't think we'll ever really know. But I'm curious to know what the original cost of the Switch 2 is to produce and what the markup is on those. We may find out in time, but I don't think so here. If Nintendo is saying this is untrue, then, well, we've got to take their word for it. And speaking about taking people's words for things, next up we're talking about micro SD cards. And if you're interested in micro SD cards in terms of reliability and speed and all of that, Matt Cole may have you covered here. There's a very interesting article talking about the best cards in 2025. This article is pretty lengthy, and I do recommend giving it a read if you're interested in micro SD cards. It seems to be pretty thorough here. They've got stuff in here like authenticity and performance and endurance and capacity and even more. You can obviously skip to the overall picks just to see who the winners are, but at the same time, the overall testing in this I find extremely interesting. And maybe there's some winners in here you didn't expect. The first overall pick I'm kind of surprised about, and that's the Kingston Canvas Go. The second pick, the PNY Pro, I did not expect this one to be here. And the third overall pick is my preferred pick, which is the SanDisk Extreme. Overall, I would say this is a very interesting comparison. However, it's worth pointing out here to pay attention to the type of micro SD card. For example, the Switch 2 only works with micro SD Express cards, which are fairly new on the market and way faster than the old micro SD cards. There's a bunch of different types of micro SD cards, not just even different brands, but different types themselves. And I didn't see any micro SD Express cards on that list. Next up, we're talking about Sega Saturn emulation with Ymir, or Ymir, depending on how you want to pronounce that one. There's a third pronunciation there. I just can't put my finger quite on it. Anyways, here, this one just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Ymir version 0.1.4 is the latest update. And this update introduces something I think a lot of people will be excited about, and that is MAME-C HD support. So they say this version focuses heavily on compatibility improvements and comes with lots of bug fixes, performance boosts, and new features. They go on to say compatibility with games has been greatly improved since version 0.1.3. Many no-boot games are now showing some signs of life, and some even go in-game and can be completed in full. On top of that, this version comes with several performance improvements. They say here that performance is up by about 11% on ARM and x86. Now, it's worth noting that is for graphics-heavy games. However, they've also added another 5 to 20% overall performance to the emulator. This is a pretty big update. And last up here, we're talking about Microsoft. And Microsoft has made a promise here I hope they keep. It's something that I am very excited about. And that may or may not be influenced by recent USB port problems that I've been having. Who knows? Anyways, here's the headline over on Tom's Hardware. Microsoft promises it is ending USB-C port confusion with updated Windows 11 certified program. All USB-C ports need to support data, charging, and display functionality. So there will be no more limited USB-C ports. If you want to be Windows certified, your USB-C port has to do everything. Now, there's even more to it there, and I do recommend checking out the article for even more information on the matter. But I, for one, am excited about this, and hopefully it helps out the USB situation on a lot of different devices out there that run Windows and I guess even Linux. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.